This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening and welcome to the November 1st, 2023 South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners meeting. I'm going to call this meeting to order. We do have all commissioners present this evening. I'd like you to all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to announce that all public sessions of the South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners are electronically recorded, filed, and posted to the Township website for public access. At this time, I would like to ask our Township Manager, Tom Petrucci, to please review our public virtual meeting rules.
Thank you. The public virtual meeting rules are as follows. Courtesy of the floor for non-agenda items will be at the beginning and end of the agenda. Public comment will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker. For all listed agenda items, the board president will call for courtesy of the floor prior to the Board of Commissioners taking action on that specific agenda item. For in-person attendees, please raise your hand to be recognized and move to the podium when directed. You will be asked to state your name and address for the record and may then proceed with asking your question. For those participating virtually, please mute your microphone or telephone to avoid any background noise that may cause interference during the meeting. The chat box feature will be active throughout the meeting. If you have a comment or question, please type your full name and address into the chat box. The staff member monitoring GoToMeeting will then unmute your microphone and you will have the opportunity to comment or ask a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I'd also like to announce that the Board of Commissioners did meet in executive session prior to tonight's meeting to discuss legal and personnel matters. Moving on to agenda item 4, courtesy of the floor. This is opportunity for any member of the public to address the board on any non-agenda items. Is there anyone present this evening who would like to address the board? Yes, sir. Please come to the microphone. Make sure that it's turned on and state your name and address for the record.
Okay, David Torrey, 1351 Deerfield Drive, Allentown, or South Whitehall. I'd like to speak about the Tahoes. I know this is kind of a sore subject around here, but I've talked to 2 commissioners since one of the last meetings when the decision was made. And the basis of my conversation is based on my experience 5 years on the Atlanta board, including vice chairman. We had a problem with the New Flyer buses, transit buses. We had at least 4 burn because of engine compartment fires, and this was pretty well known in the transit agencies. The New Flyers were Florida had problems, Red Rose and Lancaster. The staff came to us with Gillix. Gillix was a West Coast bus manufacturer, originally a school bus manufacturer. We knew nothing about a Gillix. So our first question to staff was, who's running them? Atlanta didn't want to be the first kid on the block with a new toy. No, SEPTA was running them. New York City Transit was running them. Question is, what, they have 200 of them or so. What's their experience? No problems. We went out and bought 10 Gillix. Went there back in 2007 time period, probably $250,000 to $300,000 each. I mean, 10 buses, 20, life of a transit bus is 20 years. I've talked to Commissioner Osborne and Commissioner Kelly. Both Commissioner Kelly and I have seen Tahoes operated by the New York State Police on the New York State Thruway. The Chemung County Sheriff's Department is operating Tahoes. That's Corning, Elmira, New York area. I don't know how many more Tahoes are up in New York State. But I would recommend the township staff contact the fleet operations manager of New York State Police. I assume they didn't buy 5, they probably bought 50 or 100 of them, and see what their operating experience is on these vehicles. If these vehicles are operating up in Buffalo, Watertown, Plattsburgh, New York, and they can survive up there, they can certainly survive down here. And there may be other states that have bought large quantities of Tahoes. I don't know, but we should get that, because that's And then we hopefully get that back, the report back in 30 to 60 days. But we took the recommendations from the staff, Atlanta, and what I really don't, and I really appreciate the results of the staff. If it's well thought through, then go with it. And I don't care whether that's Tahoes or backhoes. I don't want to see a situation where Public Works wants to buy our Caterpillar backhoe, and we've always had John Deere's, and somebody says, well, the specs are different and all that. That's what the staff is to figure out. Board's here to take their recommendations, and we always took the recommendations from the staff at Atlanta, and I'd like to see it done here as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to address the board this evening? Is there anyone online? Okay, hearing and seeing none, we will move on to agenda item 5, which is the approval of our meeting minutes. They've been distributed to the board in advance from our October 18th, 2023 Board of Commissioners meeting. Do any commissioners have comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. I'm going to jump over our presentation this evening, which will be the reading of our 2024 budget, and I'm going to move on down to agenda item 7. We have a resolution for promotion this evening, and I'd like to go ahead and give that a little bit priority. We have agenda item 7A, a resolution appointing Derek Morawchuk to the position of Sergeant for South Whitehall Township. I'd like to ask our Township Police Chief, Glenn Dorney, to present this agenda item.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. We have conducted the civil service promotional testing for the rank of sergeant. We currently have one vacancy. Soon to be, hopefully, Sergeant Morawchuk scored the highest and is the first ranked person on the list. I am in front of you this evening to officially request that the Board of Commissioners issue a resolution promoting Derek Morawchuk to the rank of sergeant. And if that is the case, I will read a nice synopsis of Derek to explain a little bit more about him.
Very good. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Any from the public before we proceed? Okay, hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to approve appointment of Derek Morawchuk to the position of Sergeant for South Whitehall Township?
I'll make the motion.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much. And if you would give me the opportunity to just give a little bit more about Derek. Derek Morawchuk is a 2011 graduate of Panther Valley High School. He has achieved the rank of Eagle Scout in 2011 and the rank of lieutenant with the Nesquehoning Hose Company prior to working for the South Whitehall Township Police Department. He graduated from Lehigh Carbon Community College in May of 2013 with an associate degree in criminal justice. Derek then attended Lackawanna Police Academy in 2015 and is a graduate of the Academy's 223rd class. Prior to starting with the South Whitehall Township Police Department, Derek worked part-time and full-time for the Nesquehoning Police Department, as well as full-time for the Lansford Police Department. He was sworn in as a part-time police officer at Nesquehoning Police Department in July of 2015. While working part-time for Nesquehoning PD, Derek was also sworn in as a full-time police officer for Lansford PD in April of 2016. He was later sworn in as a full-time Nesquehoning Police Department in October of 2018, shortly before coming to the South Whitehall Township Police Department. While working for Nesquehoning, Derek was awarded a commendation from the mayor of the borough in October of 2017 for putting out a kitchen fire while on duty. He also worked as the Lansford PD legal blood evidence custodian for DUI criminal cases. He was also a member of the Carbon County Drug Task Force from 2016 to 2019, during which he assisted with illegal drug activity surveillance, use of confidential informants, and controlled narcotics buys. Derek was hired and sworn in as a South Whitehall Township police officer on April 22, 2019, and has served the department as an IPIMBA certified bicycle officer, extra jobs coordinator, and commercial motor vehicle inspector, which is MIXAP. Derek has also been an active member of the field training program since November of 2020 and as a certified field training officer, and is also a bargaining unit representative since January 2022. In September of 2021, Derek received commendations for bravery and a commendation for merit at the Lehigh County Chiefs of Police Association commendation ceremony. So with that, if Derek would please come forward with his wife, Officer Haley Morawchuk, we will let her do the pinning of the chevrons on the collar. they've practiced this, so it should go smoothly. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Sergeant Marowchuk, and we wish you much success in your new role. Moving back to presentations, this evening we have the first reading of the 2024 proposed budget. I'll ask our Director of Finance, Tricia Dicker, to please present this agenda item.
Good evening, Commissioners. Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
So being just less than a week out from what I thought was a productive budget workshop meeting for 2024, we'll go through the first reading of the proposed budget by just condensing to what those fund summaries were. We presented all of you with the proposed book, which I think turned out fantastic. And should it be approved to be advertised, it will be available to the public tomorrow morning. So we'll start with the general fund. For 2024, the general fund is projecting revenues in the amount of $19,788,338 and expenses of the same, showing no surplus, no deficit, bringing to you a balanced budget for 24. The increase in revenues from 2023 is approximately 11%. And since this year, you were also presented with a balanced budget, the increase of expenses is also 11%. The fire fund is projecting $1.37 million in revenues for 2014, which is a 2.8% increase over what we budgeted for 2023. And expenditures are projected at $878,000, which is a slight increase from what was budgeted for 2023 as well. So the numbers for the fire fund are revenues projected at $1,372,000 and expenses again at $878,000, leaving a surplus of $494,000. Moving on to the water fund. Revenues for 2024 are projected at $4,870,500 and expenses $4,360,311. That's an increase in revenues of approximately 0.8% from 2023 and an increase in expenses of approximately 6.8% from 2023. The sewer fund, the revenues projected for 2024, $4,169,258, and expenses $4,130,264, leaving us with a surplus of just shy of $39,000. That's an increase in revenues of approximately 6.5% and an increase of expenses of approximately 8.6%. For the refuse fund, we are projecting an increase in revenues of approximately 71.5% and an increase in expenses of approximately 50%. This is in large part because of a new contract having to take place January 2024. Those numbers then fall at $5,022,240 in revenues, $4,516,467 in expenses, and the surplus is listed at $505,773. And much like we discussed last year, that surplus is over the life of the contract. So as we finish each year, so that we can maintain the same services throughout the throughout the life of that contract, we'll chip away at that surplus each year. Moving on to state highway aid. The revenues are expected at $726,270 and expenses at $807. This gives us a deficit of approximately $80,730, which is covered by what we're forecasting to be 2023's cash carry forward in the State Highway Aid Fund. The Open Space Fund, we're showing a 29.4% decrease in revenue from what was budgeted for 2023 and a 67.9% increase in expenses from what was budgeted in 2023. The numbers will leave us with $111,567 as a forecasted deficit. But again, the cash carry forward for 2023 would cover that. The revenues at $102,467 and expenses at $214,034. For the ARPA fund, because we're obligated to commit those ARPA monies by the end of the calendar year 2024, and as part of your capital request packet, you'll see that we have requested the board approve dedicating $673,606.27, which is the remaining money in ARPA for the South Whitehall Township Police Department's purchase of a new in-car camera and body camera system. That's not the total cost, that's just what would be committed from ARPA. The rest of it is covered by grant funding. The debt service fund, total debt payments for 2024 are expected to be $1,064,101. Of that, $665,001 is principal and $399,100 is interest. And then lastly, just talking about the capital request packet that was put in front of all of you. In 2024, the administration is requesting approval for capital requests totaling $5,645,399.07. And each of those individual requests have been submitted to you for your review. It's important to note, I know we talked about this last week, when you're trying to consider capital projects and the funding, how those capital projects get funded. Last week, we just took some time to go over the funding sources that feed that whole. So if I can just take a few seconds to repeat what those funding sources are tonight. For 2024, the $5.6 million in capital projects, the funding sources are as follows: $2,001,814 in grant revenue, $673,606.27, that's the ARPA fund commitment. $294,124.80 would be an interfund transfer from the debt fund. $63,827.65 would be an interfund transfer from Campus Reno. $214,034 would be an interfund transfer from Open Space. $1,641,066.01 as an interfund transfer from General Fund. And $756,926.35 is the forecasted cash carry forward within the capital fund currently. So those would be the funding sources that would essentially feed the $5.6 million in capital projects. So with that, if you have any questions about the numbers that were given tonight or anything that is in the book, myself and the budget team are happy to answer them.
Tricia, thank you for that presentation, and thank you and staff all involved in preparing this for us. This budget book is the most comprehensive, well laid out, summarized budget that I've seen. So thank you all for the community, for the public's interest, the narrative and summaries of departmental priorities and fund summaries that have been included in the front of this are very readable, and they're very understandable, and they really do paint a picture of the following year's initiatives for the township. So thank you for doing that. I'll open it up to the board if there's any specific comments or questions on any of the content of the budget book this evening.
I just want to ditto on Commissioner Kelly said, as I said it last week to you and your staff and the administrative departments. It was a great job, very easy to understand, straightforward. I think our stakeholders in South Whitehall Township could understand it very easily. And thank you for holding the line on taxes.
Mhm.
Of course.
Any other board comment?
I guess I would reiterate what both of you said. Thank you so much. It was clear, understandable. Thank you. Concise, comprehensive. And the process, you did all the work and you made it really smooth for us. So thank you so much.
No other comments from the board?
I'll save my lengthier complimentary comments for when we approve the budget, but really to you, Tricia, and to your entire team, thank you so much for coming before us with this. And when it's available for the public tomorrow, I would encourage every member of the public to get a copy of the budget, download it, whatever you have to do, read through the narrative, read through the fund summaries. It's a great way to see, for all residents to see the budgeted priorities of their local government. And certainly having looked at prior budgets from past years, this is the most clear and comprehensive one I've seen. So thank you so much.
Ready to hit send on that email to publish the book tomorrow morning.
There's no other more board comments. Is there any public comment? Yes, sir. You come up to the microphone and give us your name and address, please.
I'm Don Sheetsley. I live at 1411 Hampton Road. But so does that mean our water bill won't go up? Okay, because I see people online talking about going up $100 a month, and I want to be able to feed it.
I just saw that article yesterday.
So it's
yeah.
not.
So there is no proposed increase on water or sewer for South Whitehall Township
I'm glad I
residents for
came. Thank you so much.
2024.
To Mr. Sheetsley's point, that's the city of Allentown. So residents of the city of Allentown are going to see a huge increase. Residents of South Whitehall will see no increase. Yeah.
Is there a question? Sure.
David Torrey, 1351 Deerfield Drive. Just a question, 11% revenue increase, what do you attribute that to? I mean, without looking at the budget tomorrow, well, that's rather interesting.
More accurate forecasting of the revenue. So looking back at the historical trends. So that number still reflects a conservative approach towards the revenue, but it's more accurately forecasting and depicting what we feel is an accurate representation.
So would it be a combination of real estate, increase in real estate revenues, or?
We looked at every single revenue source to ensure that it's an accurate figure.
That's remarkable. I mean, many communities can't say that.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, when the book is available tomorrow, you can actually go through all the revenues in the general fund, and you'll be able to easily see which ones we're forecasting will likely come in a little higher. And there are also some that we're forecasting will come in lower. Perfect example is realty transfer tax.
Oh, yeah.
The market has been really great and we've received the fruits of those labors over the last 2 years. But you will see that we're forecasting a dip in that revenue for 2024 because the market really has slowed down a lot when those interest rates went back up. So I would encourage you to look at each of those revenue line items because you'll be able to see exactly where we're forecasting up and likely also where we're forecasting down.
Yeah, I just saw a comment in the real estate that the real estate sales are hit a 10-year low. So I think change is coming.
Mr. Torrey's point and question, it's not just more accurate forecasting done by staff, it's also maximizing all the revenue tools that we have. So if you look at the financials, say from so far in 2023, and compare that going back several years, we're really maximizing all of our revenue sources that we have. We're really enforcing all the rules on the books without necessarily raising taxes on any resident a dime. So we're just using the tools we already have at our disposal, and that's, again, a testament to the staff's hard work.
Good. Okay.
Tricia, Part of the answer to that question, and mine's a question, the separation of revenues versus expenses in, let's say, grant applications, is that also part of this particular equation that Mr. Torrey brought up?
Grant applications. So I know we did talk last week a little bit about the way certain things were booked as expenses. They were booked as offsets to expense. So, the biggest difference you probably will see is it looks like the operating cost is going up exponentially, but really it's just changing the way we're booking things so that revenue is recorded as revenue and expenses are recorded as expenses. And we're trying to get away from revenues being recorded as an offset to expense, which just naturally pushed both of those sides up. But the operating costs themselves, or I should say the percentage increase to both revenues and expenses, only 11%. But when you look at that number, it just feels bigger because we're changing the way we're recording everything. Does that answer your question, Brad?
I think Tom's going to add a little bit, but yes, exactly. That's where I'm going with that.
Yes, so that's for the general fund. For the capital fund, that's where most of the grant revenue is being booked, or for the larger projects. So that's not reflected in that 11%. So it's a twofold answer to your question that yes, the general fund, we're adjusting how the revenue is booked, but then also in the capital fund, we've been receiving more grants. So it's reflected in that number as well. And we have grants across every department, one of which is the subject of an agenda item tonight for the recycling grant. So that's just one example.
And I agree with the separation of revenue versus expenses versus offsets. And it does have an influence, but please, verify this. It does have an influence in the percentage increases in both categories. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Whatever you remove as an offset to expense on the expense side, you would add the same as an increase in revenue on the revenue side.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other public comments? Is there anything online?
I have one more. Since Brad and Tricia and Tom brought up grants, I think I'll just read a highlight from page 4 of the budget, and the public will see this once it's published. But one of the points says, starting in fiscal year 2022, South Whitehall Township has prioritized obtaining grant revenue across each department. This strategic organizational shift has resulted in approximately $995,000 in new grant funding from the fourth quarter of 2022 to the fourth quarter of 2023. And I read that figure when we first got our budget packets, and I almost fell over because I saw $995,000 in new grant funding
12 months.
in 12 months. Quite impressive across all departments.
Outstanding, and it's a testament to management and staff for the hard work that's been done to apply for grants. So thank you for working on the behalf of our citizens and businesses.
Yeah, all management and staff takes a great amount of pride in finding grant opportunities and being creative and applying the projects to the particular program. So we thank you for highlighting that.
Thank you. There's no other comments at this time. Do I have a motion to proceed with advertisement of the 2024 South Whitehall Township proposed budget? I'll make that motion a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Tricia, thank you and team very much. We have no ordinances this evening. We'll move down to agenda item 7B. We have a resolution amending resolution 2023-65, which granted conditional preliminary final approval to a major subdivision plan entitled KRE Springview Commercial. I'll turn it over to Greg Adams to present.
Thank you. This is an application to further develop the properties located at 559 Citronia, 569 Citronia, and 4590 Broadway. The plan proposes to consolidate the 3 above mentioned parcels into one tract containing 1.01 acres and construct a 3,400 square foot commercial building and a 34 space parking lot. The subject tract is zoned Highway Commercial 1. KRE Springview Commercial 2 LP is the owner and applicant. The Board of Commissioners approved the plan at their January 15, 2020 meeting and has granted 7 extensions of approval since then. To date, there are 9 conditions of approval remaining unaddressed. The applicant requests an extension of the plan to approval for a further 90 days, and the applicant is present to answer any questions you may have.
I was hoping Greg wouldn't list the number of extensions that we've got.
Excuse me, is your microphone on?
I think it's on, but I might
Okay,
not be
very good.
close enough. I'm sorry. So hopefully this is the last time I'll come in front of you guys. I think that you saw in the request for an extension, and I think people have heard, so I'd just be open about it. We are in the process and very close to selling these parcels to St. Luke's. We don't know what their plans are, if any. The sale is not contingent upon them having an approval to do anything. I think that they looked at this as being adjacent to their property, adjacent to the stormwater, the regional basin that they own. They're in fact doing some utility work there now that we've granted them an easement for. But our hope is to sell it to them. And we are at the very, very last stages of that process, seeking a release from the bank because that parcel is part of the collateral for the broader loan on the Springview project. So the only reason that I'm here, and I spoke with Greg and Dave about this, is because in the very, very unlikely chance, let's say 1%, though who could put a percent on it, but in the very unlikely chance that that sale doesn't go through and that we can't get the release from the bank, we would just like to be able to protect the approval that we have, again, with no left turn onto Broadway and meeting all the conditions that we have previously agreed to. In fact, the plans are in that state right now. While we were selling this to St. Luke's, we didn't want to record those or have everybody go through the trouble of signing them when that's not going to happen. But the plans are in final recordable shape. We have a folder of all the other agency approvals that have been attained, from sewer to the conservation district, et cetera. But again, we're just asking for 90 days here to hopefully consummate the sale to St. Luke's, which we think would be good for everybody. And then at that time, St. Luke's would be coming to this board with whatever they wanted to do with that property, if anything. So that's our request. And I apologize for this being our 8th time here in front of this board.
Well, thank you. Good luck with your future plans. I hope everything works out for you. I see in our memo that staff has no objection to the request. I'll just ask our solicitor if there's any.
No, there are no concerns. This is fully within the discretion of the board.
Very good. Are there any board comments?
I just have one question. You're requesting 90 days. Do you think that will be enough to finalize the sale?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The closing was actually, to be honest, supposed to happen this week. But we're working through the release. So this is well down the line. Yeah.
Any other comments? Any public comment? Commissioner Hodges.
I just wanted to say it's been quite a journey for you.
No doubt.
And
Yes.
I
Every
wish
time I
you
come
all
up
the
here,
best.
I like hang my head, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm back in front of these guys again for an extension. But in the broader sense, Springview has been, a real success for us, and we hope for the community as well. We have really come to know Chief Dorney and others closely through this process, but that has also been a great benefit to us. So
We wish you the
Wonderful.
best.
yeah. All right.
There's no public comment. Then I have a motion to approve a resolution regarding a major subdivision plan entitled KRE Springview Commercial 2, granting a 90-day extension.
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Good luck to you.
Safety.
Moving on to agenda item 7C, we have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of South Whitehall Township, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, adopting the 2023 South Whitehall Township Comprehensive Parks and Recreation Plan. I'll turn it over to Tom Petrucci to present.
Thank you. A comprehensive park and recreation plan is a municipal plan that identifies the methods, resources, organizational capacity, and capital investments needed to accomplish both short-term and long-term park and recreational goals for the community. The current South Whitehall Township Comprehensive Park and Recreation Plan was completed in 2009 as a joint plan with North Whitehall Township. Recognizing the length and the duration of the plan since it was adopted, the township felt that it was necessary to update the plan. So starting in 2022, the township engaged Barry Isaac and Associates and Lindsay Taylor, who is a certified park and recreation professional, to begin working on the plan update. So the plan was to consider the new additions to township parks and facilities and changing trends in modern recreations. The plan undertook an extensive public engagement process, including public meetings, key person interviews, and both online and paper citizen surveys. The project team compiled that information, learned to develop broad-based recommendations to fulfill the vision for South Whitehall's Parks and Recreation system for the next 10 years. In addition, township staff, commissioners, and members of the South Whitehall Township Parks and Recreation Board were involved in and engaged in a steering committee. The steering committee has coordinated this project and was involved in the development of plans, goals, and recommendations, and has reviewed the final draft of the plan. In addition, the South Whitehall Township Parks and Recreation Board reviewed the draft plan during its September 11th, 2023 meeting and voted unanimously to recommend the plan for adoption. At the September 20th, 2023 meeting, the South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners authorized the release of the draft plan for a 30-day public comment period without receiving any public comments that would cause reason to alter the draft plan. In other words, there were no substantive comments received. Township staff recommends the Board of Commissioners adopt the 2023 South Whitehall Township Comprehensive Parks and Recreation Plan as written and as set forth in the resolution before you.
Very good, Tom. Thank you. I want to thank all of Township staff for compiling all of the data, for reaching out to the community to get input from our residents and businesses and stakeholders. It's really a wonderful plan. So many thanks to all. Are there any public comments or questions on this agenda item? Any from the public? Okay, hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the resolution to adopt the 2023 South Whitehall Township Comprehensive Parks and Recreation Plan?
So moved.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to agenda item 7D, we have a resolution authorizing the disposition of township records in accordance with Act 428. I'll ask our Director of Community Development, Dave Manhart, to present.
Yes, so we have periodically we go through old files. We have several locations full of old files, and we follow guidelines set forth by the state for the destruction and retention of those documents. What we're looking for approval to destroy are building and zoning permit applications from between 2005 and 2009. These are all residential applications, and the state guidelines included in the memo, we are only required to keep them active 5 years. The requirements are we don't have to even keep a digital copy. We like to have digital copies on hand, so we either have them scanned into what we call our property file or into our records retention system, Laserfiche. We have it in one of two locations. All of these files have been gone through. We actually recently had to pull out certificates of occupancy because those have another standard for retention. So we've been going through these boxes. It's something that we go through periodically. Hopefully we'll start doing it annually. It's something we're trying to work into our workflow.
Very good. Thank you for that presentation. Are there any questions from the board? Commissioner Osborne?
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. Dave, where are these records kept physically?
There's some in the archive room that we have here. Right now, we'll take boxes from the archive room, we'll move them into our back storage area and go through them as time allows. So we've basically taken the year to go through this set of boxes. Once we get through these, we'll bring another set of boxes and go through those and start the process until we hopefully get through all of it.
Do we have any trailers outside the physical building where we store records?
We do. These are not involved. We're focusing on documents in here so that we eventually have room to start bringing some of that in here.
Those trailers cost us money. No.
I think they used to.
Two of those trailers were here before I started, so I don't know if they were donated, purchased with township dollars. I know the one that is currently on the facility is purchased last year after the renovation, which we did rent, and then we purchased at the end. And there is a Connex that has paperwork in that was here before I started also.
Okay, so it's not ongoing expense, but it was at one time an expense.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Any other board comment?
So just to clarify, I had a question. These records are being destroyed. There's 5 years as a state guideline, but we still have them, even though we're destroying the physical record, we still have them
We have the
on
digital
digital.
files,
Okay,
yes.
so we're going above and beyond.
Yes.
Really. Okay, thank you.
Any public comment? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to approve resolution authorizing the disposition of township records listed in Exhibit A in accordance with Act 428?
Make a motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to agenda item 7E, we have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Township of South Whitehall, Lehigh County, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, establishing a policy regarding the actuarial analysis of pension funding. I'll ask our township manager to present.
Thank you. So this agenda item also connects to agenda item 8A, so I'll cover both at the same time if that's okay.
Sure.
All right. So the policy itself, as set forth in the resolution, defines and delineates the fact that the Board of Commissioners were recommending that you adopt eventually a 7% interest rate assumption for the defined benefit pension plans. So every 2 years, you are required to undertake an actuarial analysis and conduct a valuation of the defined benefit pension plan. So that takes into account the interest rate assumptions, the mortality tables, as well as the funding status of the plan currently. So right now, your assumption for the interest rate on the investment returns is 7.625%. It's based on the market value of assets. The pension committee, during its meeting on October 25th, feels that an interest rate assumption goal of 7% is more appropriate and would be based on the plan's annualized actual rate of return since plan inception and balanced against the anticipated expected long-term return on assets as determined by the pension committee and the plan manager. So essentially, the investment returns are converging to a point that is lower over time. So it's the recommendation of the pension committee to incrementally lower that interest rate assumption to be more accurate with the intent of adequately funding the plan over time. It's also the identified attempt of the township to balance the interest rate assumption so that the amount of contributions to the plans paid by South Whitehall Township, the Commonwealth of PA for its state aid allocation, and as well as employee contributions is both equitable and accurate. In other words, you want to have an amount set that is neither too high or too low. For example, if you anticipate you're going to have 9% of interest rate returns on the pension plan, but you only get 6%, you're then significantly underfunding your pension. If you're estimating you're only going to get 5% returns, but then you get 7%, then you're going to end up putting more money into the plan than what is necessary. So this policy before you indicates that your goal is to eventually reach the 7%, but that you will review, in accordance with the pension committee, specific recommendations for actuarial plan adjustments. So, and using the tools available to you to do so, included asset smoothing, interest rate assumption adjustments, and salary scale adjustments that are permissible in accordance with Act 205 requirements when you complete the 2-year valuation reports. So every time these valuation reports are completed, the pension committee will review it and then refer recommendations to you. And then this policy is also drafted with the intent of facilitating a fully funded pension plan for all the defined benefit plans in accordance with Act 205 requirements. So that's the resolution before you. If you'd like, I can get into the specifics of the actuarial action we're requesting as well for the next motion, because it kind of they dovetail together. So um, so as indicated, the pension committee recommended that South Whitehall Township adjust the interest rate assumption to get us to closer to 7%. So for this valuation period, which is 1/1/23 and is due to be filed with the state by March 31st of 2024, we're recommending a 7.5 interest rate assumption and then using asset smoothing over a 5-year period in order to ensure that the market value gains and losses both average out over time. So instead of recognizing exactly what the market value of the plan is as of 1/1/23, you're essentially smoothing it out over a longer period of time. So it gives the township of option of spreading it out, and it factors in annual rate of return, both actual and estimated, asset gain and loss, the years to smooth out, differences recognized, and the amount deferred. So it's important to know that asset smoothing balances both gains and losses equitably over a predetermined time period. As indicated in this sense, in this particular instance, we're recommending 5 years. So the switch to the 7.5% interest rate assumption and the 5-year smoothing is projected to lower the 2025 minimum municipal obligation for the defined pension benefit plans by a total of $516,211. It will also raise the funded percentage of each plan above the 70% threshold, specifically ranging from 74.3%, 78.5%, and 79.7% for an average of 77.6%. For example, or for reference, if the township made no changes to the current plans, the funding percentage is below 70% for all 3 defined benefit pension plans. Your ultimate goal is to increase the funding percentage to 100% or as close as you can get to it. So there's 2 actions before you. The first was the approval of the resolution to establish the policy to memorialize these actions, and then approval of the motion to change the interest rate assumption for all defined benefit pension plans, including police, public works, and office personnel of South Whitehall Township from 7.625% to 7.5% to utilize a 5-year actuarial value of assets, asset smoothing for the Act 205 valuation report due to be filed with the Commonwealth on or before March 31st, 2024.
Very good, Tom. Thank you. I do want to thank the pension committee and all involved for researching and bringing this to the board with a recommendation. I don't personally have any questions on the policy. I think it's very well presented, very well written, and I'm certainly in favor of adopting. Are there any comments from the board on the policy that we will vote on? Commissioner Osborne?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Kelly. Before I make some comments about it, I just wanted to recognize Commissioner Kennedy, who was also on the pension committee. And so, Commissioner Kennedy, do you have any words you'd like to say at this point?
No, I think
No,
I'm fine with it. I think Tom did an excellent job explaining it. If anybody here can understand it, it is complicated. I think we had a great meeting, and I think they explained it very well at the pension committee meeting. I know Commissioner Osborne had quite a few questions, so did I, and they answered them very thoroughly and satisfactorily, I think, for the township, for the employees of South Whitehall Township.
Excellent.
I'm pleased with it.
I enjoyed serving on the committee. Let me ask a specific question just for the public record. Tom, what is the minimum municipal obligation, the MMO, for actually this year? And I have a point, I have a reason for asking that.
It's actually right in the budget. Sorry, I just didn't have it.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to catch a cold, but I do want to make a point.
Actually, you know what? I have it. I know what it is in my head. I'm sorry.
So as Tom looks that up, it's going to
Picking up now, but yeah, I'm sorry.
It's going to be a significant figure. And the reason I say that is this for 2 reasons. One is it does materially affect the budget, the expenses to the taxpayers in South Whitehall. The second one is that it's with this policy, which I am so thankful that we've come up with, the first time that I'm aware of that South Whitehall has a pension policy with targets that are documented and available, to the public, so you can see what we're doing. It also ensures that the employees, every employee, police, public works, administration, are protected and are guaranteed that the money that they are expecting and deserve as public employees, the pension is going to be there for them when they retire. So I really am pleased working with Commissioner Kennedy and the entire pension board that we have a policy and something that it doesn't mean necessarily that has to be written in stone. It can be changed in the future, but here's a target. This is where we're headed, and these are the principles behind it. So with that, maybe Tom, did you have a chance to?
Yeah, I have it, yes.
Yeah.
So for reference, the 2024 MMO, which was certified by the deadline of September, the end of September 2023, office pension plan, defined benefit plan is $770,730. Police pension plan is $1,241,903. Public works pension plan is $681,576. The defined contribution plan is $210,571. So the total MMO is $2,904,779. In the 24 budget, what we have done is separated the MMO payment for each department or for each category so that it's better attributed to that particular department. Before it was all one lump payment into the budget. We've now separated it out.
Thank you, Tom. Collectively, so what we heard was the pension plan cost the township upwards of $3 million. So it makes it that much, in my mind, that much more important that we have a policy that directs the assurance that we're going to fund this properly and responsibly, and also we're transparent in what that policy is. So thank you.
Any other board comments at this time? Any public comment? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to approve resolution establishing a policy regarding actuarial analysis of pension funding? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. I'll move right over to motion 8A, which is in tandem with this one. It's a motion to approve a change in the interest rate assumption for all defined benefit pension plans, including police, public works, and office personnel of South Whitehall Township from 7.625% to 7.5%, and to utilize a 5-year actuarial value of assets, asset smoothing, for the Act 205 valuation report due to be filed with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania on or before March 31st, 2024. Are there any board comments or questions on this motion? Any public comment? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to approve said motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Again, many thank you to the pension committee and all staff involved. Agenda item 8B, we have a motion to proceed with signing letter of intent regarding leaf truck for the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection 902 recycling grant to be budgeted in the 2024 budget. I'll ask our Director of Operations, Herb Bender, to please present this agenda item.
Thank you. South Whitehall Township was recently awarded a Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection 902 Development and Implementation of Municipal Recycling Programs grant in the amount of $316,575. The reason for bringing this to the Board of Commissioners is to see if they would be inclined to allow the township administration to sign a letter of intent so that the leaf hook truck will be a first quarter build. This grant also covers 6 dumpsters for the Yard and Garden Center that can be hauled with this truck to make it a dual use truck. The breakdown of the cost of this truck is the cab and chassis, which will be a Freightliner, is $130,247. The Stevenson equipment, leaf collector, and the multi-lift system will be $219,453.14. Eagle Truck Equipment, Inc. for the 6 dumpsters will be $35,880. The grand total for the complete dual-use truck is $385,580.14. The grant portion again is $316,575. Township portion after reimbursement of the grant would be $69,005.14. The township manager has reviewed this grant and confirmed the following. The use of co-stars is an acceptable procurement method for this purchase. The township has appropriately budgeted the expense of this truck as a capital purchase in the 2024 capital fund budget. A separate audit will not be required for this grant-funded project. The action we're requesting is administration is looking for a motion to proceed with the signing of the letter of intent of this dual-use truck. And the reason we are bringing this to you now, I have checked with Freightliner. If we sign that now, it will lock the price, and the same thing with Stevenson's. So there is possibility in January that we could see a 3 to 5% increase. If we sign these now, we can lock the price. The only one who did not get back to me was the Eagle Truck Equipment for the dumpsters. But I did have them all refresh the quote right before we put this in the packet. Their price has not changed since halfway through the year of last year. When we filled this grant out in 2022, this truck was the price has gone up like $30,000 already. So we have seen significant increases from the time we got the quotes, submitted the grant, and got the final approval and contract back.
Excellent. Thank you, Herb. Thank you for bringing it to the board for consideration. Again, as Tom mentioned earlier, this is one of the grants that was included in the numbers that were read earlier that the township had been the beneficiary of in the last 12 months. So thank you to all staff for seeking this grant. We're grateful for it. Are there any board comments or questions on this agenda item?
I do have a quick question. Herb, is this going to be in addition to our current fleet, or will this be replacing something? What's the plan?
This will be an addition to the fleet. This truck will be a dual use. So this truck will be used during leaf season, also taking a crew from that we would normally need 2 people to run down to a 1-man crew. You can do everything from inside the cab, from the horn on the side of the leaf collector is all done with a joystick inside the cab. So what we're looking to do is try to eliminate using the tracklesses as much, which are very breakdown prone and are very expensive. We have to get all the parts for those from Canada. So we're looking to try to move away from them. So we're looking to get these also, which takes the crews down from 2-man to 1-man again also. And is very safe because right now with the machines we have, one guy is walking behind the truck on the street. This person is enclosed in the cab.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds like a great purchase.
Yeah, and then the other thing for this is with the dumpsters, once we get that, we will be able to haul these dumpsters ourselves to Fricka. So we will be able to save some costs there also possibly.
Fantastic. Thank you. Any other board comment? Any public comment? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to proceed with signing a letter of intent regarding leaf truck for the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection 902 recycling grant?
Moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Herb.
Thank you.
Agenda item 8C, we have a motion to approve a 1-year extension for continuation of the memorandum of understanding regarding prior year law enforcement experience. And I'll call on our township manager, Tom Petrucci, to present.
Thank you. During the February 15th, 2023 Board of Commissioners meeting, the governing body approved the enclosed the referenced memorandum of understanding MOU dated February 20th, 2023, which provided for a process by which to credit newly appointed entry-level patrol officers with eligible previous law enforcement service, which is specifically defined in said MOU. This MOU expires on December 31st, 2023. We are asking approval to extend this MOU by another year. It would expire on December 31st, 2024. So with that, I'd seek a motion to authorize the township manager to execute the memorandum of understanding concerning an extension of the agreement to credit newly appointed entry-level patrol officers for eligible previous police service between South Whitehall and the South Whitehall Township Police Bargaining Unit.
Very good. Thank you, Tom. And for the benefit of the public, the reason you're asking for this, the recruitment.
So to give us the flexibility during the recruitment process, we were able to take advantage, hopefully with at least one candidate. So we see no reason to extinguish what has ostensibly been a successful addition to the township's recruitment process.
Very good. I would agree. Thank you for that summary. Are there any board comments or questions? Any from the public? Do I have a motion to authorize the township manager to execute an MOU concerning an extension of the agreement to credit newly appointed entry-level patrol officers for eligible previous police service between South Whitehall Township and the South Whitehall Township Police Bargaining Unit? I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We have no old business tonight. Agenda item 10 is boards and commissions. Tom, if you'd please review.
Thank you. Upcoming meetings and events with details all posted on the township website are listed as follows. Monday, November 6th, 7 p.m., Public Safety Commission. One note on the Public Safety Commission, we have received a number of inquiries concerning Trexler Boulevard and Highland Street installation of temporary speed humps. I'm listing this at this point because the Public Safety Commission had recommended the installation of the speed humps. We have ordered temporary speed humps and we hope to have them in early November, and we will install them shortly thereafter upon arrival. I just wanted to provide an update on that longstanding issue.
Very good. Thank you.
Wednesday, November 8th, 10 a.m., Civil Service Commission. Wednesday, November 8th, 6 p.m., Board of Commissioners special meeting in which LCA Executive Director Liesl Gross will be in attendance. Monday, November 13th, 7 p.m., Parks and Recreation Board. Wednesday, November 15th, a regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners at 7 p.m. We have still a number of vacancies that are available on boards and commissions. The township did advertise the availability of the vacancies and the expired terms. We have not received any new applications since doing so. We are exploring internally the option of holding a open house of sorts in which we explain township operations and as well as what these commissions and boards do on a regular basis, and that would be facilitated by township staff. So if the board is inclined, we can proceed with that direction unless you see any objections.
Oh, I think that's a great idea to have opportunity for the public to come in and learn about the boards. Absolutely.
And we'll have to extend the application deadline for those vacancies.
I'm in agreement with that. It sounds like a wonderful idea.
All right, thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 11A, direction discussion, South Whitehall Township Landscapes Plan Project Update and Early Implementation. I'll ask our Director of Community Development, Dave Manhart, to present.
Yes, so I have Chris Stroller on. If he would like to unmute, I'll let him handle this.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I had to log in, log back out. So we just wanted to provide an update to the board. Last week, we had our fifth and final public workshop meeting for the South Whitehall Landscapes Plan, which is an open space, natural resource, historic preservation, and agricultural preservation plan. And staff is now working on taking what we've learned over the past several months through these workshops and lots of professional expert outreach. And we are putting together the draft plan and the final recommendations. We wanted to bring to the board's attention tonight, there are two recommendations that are more time sensitive that we're looking at as more early implementation projects. The first of these being a historic resource survey. So throughout this planning process, staff has utilized the resources we've had available to identify historic resources, either identified in the previous two comprehensive plans, resources identified on our official map. We've had a great resource with the 1976 bicentennial book on the township. And we've taken all this information, worked with our professional consultant, Jeff Marshall, to start to look at how we compile all of this, how we categorize all of this, and really what we need to do before we can move forward on some of the other preservation ordinance work is to get a full survey of these resources to cross-reference what we have, what's still in existence, the condition of these resources, and more information that can inform an appropriate historic resource inventory, so to speak. So while we're working with our consultant to finalize this plan, one of the things we wanted to bring to the board was the idea of asking Jeff Marshall to pursue a more in-depth historic resource survey that would prepare all this information so that we could have a more complete and comprehensive inventory that we can utilize when developing a historic resource preservation ordinance. That ordinance would include the opportunities for pauses when projects come in, either for development or for permits for construction, for us to review whether that building is listed in our historic resource inventory. It could potentially unlock adaptive reuse provisions for landowners and developers who are interested in adaptive reuse if it's designated as a historic resource. So we need a little bit more information that would be conducted in this historic resource survey. So we're asking the board some direction on whether we should get more information from our consultant, Jeff Marshall, as to performing a historic resource survey like that over the coming months so that we can start to prepare this information in January. The second item that came up through our compilation of recommendations for this plan is the idea of open space funding, conservation funding. We presented at the last meeting, we introduced the idea of the different tools in the toolbox available for open space acquisition or preservation of open spaces, and identified the need for the township to leverage things like grant funding or other monies available, the idea of an open space tax. And we talked a little bit about the enabling legislation that allows the township to enact this open space tax. The idea here is that we're bringing this to the board now because the open space tax would be agreed upon if passed by majority of a voter referendum, voter referendum. And we could either look at this in the spring primary election or in the fall 2024 general election. In order to do that, there is a number of steps we need to take ahead of time. So, Dave, I don't know if you can pull up the timeline. So we've laid out just a preliminary timeline pending legal review that just provides some basic steps for the board to consider if there is interest in, one, pursuing the referendum for an open space tax. Again, just the process to get this referendum onto the ballot and then letting the voters decide. And the process for the primary election, as you can see with what's laid out, is a fairly aggressive timeline only because the requirements to get the ballot language approved by the county Board of Elections. There's a number of steps we need to take before that can happen, or there is option B and having this go to the general election this time next year, along with the presidential election. So 2 items that we're looking at is early implementation related to the South Whitehall Landscapes Plan. We want to bring it to the board's attention to have some discussion, because for both of these, staff can be working on preparing more information to bring to the board in the next coming meetings, depending on the interest of pursuing these 2 items earlier as we move forward with the landscapes plan and move that forward to eventual adoption this year, hopefully.
Chris, thank you for that presentation. Thank you, Chris and Dave and staff, for the many hours and meetings that you've held for the landscapes plan. I was able to attend a few of the meetings. They were very informative. If any of our citizens are interested, they are on our website to view and listen to. There's an awful lot of information there. So I want to, first of all, thank you for that. I personally, on the historic resource survey, think that is something that our township would benefit greatly for having an inventory and an understanding to begin to move forward with historic preservation here. But I'll open it to the board on that particular, and then we can discuss the open space as a second topic. Go ahead.
Sure. I will, yeah, on the first topic, and here. I mean, I definitely think if we're to conduct a historic resource survey utilizing Jeff Marshall's services, that was in the memo, correct? I definitely think that's a good idea. I had the opportunity to attend the workshop that specifically focused on historic resources, and just in having a few conversations with Jeff Marshall, his knowledge is really unbelievable. I approached him just having a basic knowledge of some of the historic barns in the township, and he took the conversation in a very thorough direction and talked about what he's seen in his experience, and what he believes that certainly the historic or architectural value of some of the structures we have in the township are. He's definitely a resource we should continue to use. So if you're looking for feedback on that specific point, yes. And then I do have comments on the second one, but if we're going to hold off on that until everyone
I
comments
think
on the
that's
first one.
probably wise.
Okay, I do agree as well. I thought Jeff was a really fantastic, solid resource throughout those landscape meetings. I had the pleasure of attending all of them, and he just provided such guidance and just a great overall resource. So I would be in favor of that. My quick question, is that in the CD budget too?
So we should be able to accommodate it in the 2023 budget. We have to finalize the scope of work, and we'll come back with that for the formal motion.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Should we go in that direction?
That you answered one of my questions on that. And the other is, I think definitely we should look at the historical resource survey. I think it's been talked about as long as I've been on the commission, the historical aspects of South Whitehall Township. And, if we don't do something, nothing will get done. I think it definitely should be looked at.
And Chris kind of alluded to it. We have a list of over 70 potential resources, and we need to take the next step to investigate those.
Fantastic. Are there any public comment on? Yes, sir.
Dave Torrey, 1351 Deerfield Drive. Have you looked at resources, Lehigh County Historical Society?
Yes, we have spoke to them. They were part of our subject matter expert research and reached out to them.
Okay,
Absolutely.
because I'll say over 8 years ago, they had a presentation on a Saturday afternoon by builder architect who moved from New Jersey over here to Lehigh County. And he did a survey on barns, and he classified barns by age, by type, by condition, and all that. And Lehigh, I could not believe this. South Whitehall at the time had the second largest number of barns in Lehigh County. Now, obviously, some have been torn down, but I don't know who, I can't recall the writer of the book, but he was featured one afternoon at Lehigh County. But, it was like, South Whitehall Township having the second most barns, I think was like Upper Saucon had more barns than we did. But you would think that somewhere it would be up in, North Whitehall or Weisenberg or something. But anyway, and you just look at Greenwalls. Go around Greenwalls. Just look at the number of barns in Greenwalls. So anyway, it was interesting.
Absolutely is. Thank you for sharing. Yes, if you, just your name and address.
Chris Peischel, 1544 North Main Street. Did he give you a rough estimate how much this would cost? Like,
We're finalizing the scope. Range between 10 and 25 is kind of what we're thinking.
so with what Commissioner Kennedy said, we've talked about this ad nauseum. Can you put a deadline before the barns fall apart?
But that's part of the reason we're bringing this forward is because time is of the essence on a lot of these resources that we do have.
Like 3 months or 4 months? I mean, we have the list.
We'll have to work it out with Jeff, but that'll be included in the formal proposal.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Any
Yeah.
other public comment? Oh, go ahead.
If I could add, part of the reason we're bringing it forward tonight is because we have Jeff already engaged to help us with this plan. A lot of the information we have, it's very easy to kind of get a head start with working with Jeff immediately after this plan, as opposed to, say, making this a formal recommendation in the landscapes plan, waiting several months, going out and trying to find another consultant to start from scratch. We have, I'd say, several months of legwork already in the book with Jeff here. So I think there's a cost savings to that and definitely a time savings.
Very good, thank you. If there's no other comments on, I think you've got direction, clear direction from the board on that one. Okay, so on to your second point, which was the discussion regarding open space tax timeline, if that's something the board was interested in. I certainly am in favor of exploring this option to bring before our residents. One of the things that I would like to see us endeavor, and you do have it listed here, is public outreach and education. I think that's critical. I know there's certainly a great deal of residents in South Whitehall who are interested in preserving open space, but just explaining the complexities and what it means if this were to be approved, how would it position the township? How do we work with landowners? Certainly would like to see a plan laid out to make sure that we do that effectively and reach as many of our residents and stakeholders as we possibly can.
One of the things with, as far as timing and that public outreach, is we have some momentum with the landscapes plan, and putting this soon after landscapes plan gets adopted, we can build upon it and do some further outreach related to the adopted landscapes plan.
Excellent.
And I'll also
go ahead, Chris.
if I can just add quickly that one of the things that why we're bringing in direction discussion tonight is to kind of get the feel for when the board wants to look into this, and that we're proposing we'd come back with a little bit more of a formal presentation for the board and about the process itself. And then following that would be certainly much more outreach directly to the public about what happens if this gets put into place with public workshops.
I do have some just comments on time. It seems like, Chris, correct me if you're wrong, you're looking for specific feedback with respect to option A or option B, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I just have a couple of comments with that. I mean, obviously, I would have loved to see a referendum like this go on a municipal ballot, preferably next week. But obviously, given time constraints and where we are in the process and how long this process has taken us, that's not possible. So it looks like next year would be it. I did have something to throw out there with option A. I know the state legislature has been going back and forth on potentially changing the date of the primary from April 23rd to, I believe, March 19th was one of their proposals. Another was April 2nd. I just pulled up a news article a couple minutes ago previewing this, and some say that it's too late to do that now. Others say that the issue is still ongoing. So we just need to be cognizant of that. Harrisburg, you never know where they're going to land. So just to be cognizant of that. And then the other thing, if we're talking about putting this question on the primary, the general election, obviously those who are not registered with one of the two major political parties, if they wanted to vote for this or against it in the primary, they wouldn't necessarily be expecting to vote anyway. In South Whitehall, it's not a huge percentage. I think it's about 10 or 15% of the registered voters. But there would have to be more specific outreach to them about this specific issue, saying to them, no, you can't vote on everything else, but you can vote on this. So that might be a persuasive argument to put it on the November ballot instead when you have a full sort of hopefully electorate coming out to vote. I know that's what was done with the Where's Dam referendum in 2016 and the library referendum in 2016 as well. And the only other thing I'd add is if we're going to do public outreach, I know Lower Macungie Township overwhelmingly passed an open space tax referendum in November of 2021, I believe. I know they ran a pretty robust public education campaign. We're a little bit behind them in terms of moving towards lands preservation, but along the similar path. So definitely, if you have the opportunity to reach out to them, see how they did it, see how they crafted the question, see how they conducted public outreach. If they have a template for what we want to do, rather than have to go through a multi-month process here, if it's similar, use what they've already done. So those are my comments.
I do have a question for you. I think it's important to do this. We've been hearing this for years. I think now's the time, and it fits so nicely with the completion of the comp plan. With the completion of the comp plan, and now at the ending of all the landscape meetings. So I think we put it into the hands of the public. Absolutely. One of the questions I'm sure people will ask is, how much? Is there any kind of ballpark you can give the average household? What
We have preliminary numbers that were presented from the Land Preservation Committee. I think it was almost close to a year ago. The date was very coincidentally close to today. It may have been an October meeting. So we have numbers that were developed for that. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I think we were talking about, and Chris probably has a better handle on it, I think 0.15%. Is that correct, Chris?
Correct.
And you'll be presenting that to the board.
Yeah. So one of the, I guess if option A was something the board would be interested in, we would propose the November 15th Board of Commissioners meeting to present a more formal presentation that would talk about the information learned through the Land Preservation Committee, including the proposed tax increase for the earned income tax based on the research that was done on South Whitehall specifically. To Commissioner Roth's comments, we would lay out kind of the things to consider as far as our outreach. I think you bring up a great point as far as the the municipal primary in spring doesn't always won't always bring out the independent voters. I know in some other campaigns that I have seen throughout Pennsylvania with this, that has been part of the outreach specifically. There's been a lot of, in many cases, that the specific ballot question has been kind of the the point to get people out to vote for this, and it's been successful in places like that because it does kind of keep the attention for people who are interested in voting for it, and it's a little bit easier to not get lost in, say, uh, the other political campaigns, especially around maybe a presidential campaign. So that's one of the reasons we would um, have the board maybe consider option A, only because while you may draw out more voters in option B, this question also tends to be at the bottom of a very long list of things to vote on and can often get lost. Whereas if it is the primary piece of an election, there's certainly a lot of momentum around that, and we can focus a lot of public education for that.
I'll follow up on that. Actually, you raised a good point. I didn't think of that before. Um, Maybe it's something to consider if we do want to go with option A, just because if you don't have severely contested primaries, in a presidential race, statewide race, whatever, you can focus more attention on this, and maybe voters would respond better to that. So my only comment would be, I think regardless of whether, if we do decide to send this to the voters, ultimately we're not levying the tax increase. The voters sort of levy that on themselves if they so choose. But I would say let's proceed with the option A calendar anyway. Try to have some more substantive materials to us by the 15th. Just because we have everything ready to go for the spring, it doesn't mean that we're going to do it in the spring, but if it's ready to go, we can choose that option. So I think if you're looking for specific feedback from commissioners tonight, my opinion would be, let's proceed as if we're doing option A, even if it doesn't end up being option A.
Does that present any issue for staff? Because option A would also include the draft ordinance being put together.
It's certainly an aggressive timeline. The benefit is there's a lot of materials out there on this. So Commissioner Roth mentioned Laura McCungy. So there's a lot of material out there for us to work with and pull together. And we can certainly focus on it if that's the pleasure of the board and get something before you.
My only concern is public outreach. The period of time that we would have to work with the public is much shorter with option A, and I'm thinking it's wintertime. Option B, just from a practical standpoint, is April, May, June. It's summertime. We have lots of township events where we can engage the public. They're coming out. That was where I was leaning, just as far as wanting to maximize our opportunity to educate the community. So, but I'm open to either, depending on the pleasure of the board, but from a practical standpoint, I was leaning towards B.
The other important piece of information here is that if you do a referendum and it doesn't pass, you can't put another one on the ballot for another 5 years. So with that in mind, I would recommend a longer public comment period and public outreach period.
That's a good point. Thank you. Any other board comment?
I have another question. Whether we go with option A or option B, two different timelines, when would the tax actually be implemented? Would it be,
2025.
so either way, it wouldn't be implemented till fiscal year 2020?
You wouldn't impose it till 25, correct?
Okay.
So pleasure of the board, would we want to lean toward option A or B? I will go with option B, given the recommendation from management and my own comments prior to that, to have more public outreach opportunity.
My recommendation would be also option B, only because I think that the advertisements and all in the public education, shorter period. And like you said, it's around the holidays. Whereas if you do B, you can do it next year, a little bit more time. So we do it right. And somebody isn't saying I wasn't aware of it or I didn't know what I was voting on. I think there's going to be more activity within the township, as Diane said, to get it out to the public, the voting public.
I also agree with option B. A little more time to be more deliberate, target as many residents as we possibly can. And that's going to be a huge election. So
And we could almost dedicate a good portion of our spring newsletter to this particular topic. I mean, we could make it almost a newsletter specifically on that with just a few pages for Township News.
And I think your point of all the summer public events that we have, the movies in the park and concerts, great opportunity to go to where the people are.
Is there any other board comment or opinion on this? Any public comment? Anything online, Dave?
I guess my only comment would be either way, if it passes, it doesn't get levied till 2025. So I guess it really doesn't matter which ballot we place it on.
Okay.
And with option B, we still have the presentation in fall 2023. So in the next, I guess we only have 3 meetings left. So it'll be at one of those 3.
Soon. Okay, excellent. Again, thank you and Chris and all involved administration for bringing this to us this evening. On to agenda item 11B, Lower Macungie Township official map revisions. Dave, will you present that one as well?
So what we have in front of us is a draft Lower Macungie official map revision, and they submitted out to neighboring municipalities for public comment. We've reviewed it, and the primary change that relates to South Whitehall, I'll pull up the map. Is the highlighted section on the township border that they're indicating for preservation. So that's along, I believe it's Hillside Road. So we commented on that we will use this information and, as we're looking at recommendations for our official map updates, we will look at neighboring municipalities. So having this area adjacent to our township, and there's actually a farmer's field right adjacent to that. So it makes a lot of sense to look at that subject property. So the comments revolve around that as the primary rationale for support.
Thank you to staff for bringing this to our attention. A very well written letter to submit to Lower Macungie with comments on their map. Timely considering what we're talking about this evening. I am fully in agreement with the sending of this letter. Other comments from the board? Okay. Everyone in agreement? Moving on to agenda item 12, courtesy of the floor. Again, opportunity for any member of the public to comment on any non-agenda items. Does anyone have anything to bring to the board this evening? Anyone online, Dave? No. Okay. Item 13, I did a motion to authorize payment of invoices and disbursements. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. We have no executive session. I need a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. This motion is adjourned.